There's honestly about a million different things that you could talk about when coming into Super Bowl 54, and I'm sure they all will get talked about within the next, week and a half before it actually happens. But one of the most interesting things I think about this game is the fact that the Chiefs actually did a pretty poor job, especially last week against Tennessee, of being able to stop play action. They got fooled on play action very frequently. They're making a conscious effort to stop Derrick Henry, but they kept getting fooled on play action, especially early on. And as we all know, when it comes to San Francisco, they love to run play action. It's their favorite thing to do. That's kind of just how they play their game. They go after the run, they make sure they can run the ball well, and then any point they can just run play action. You get fooled, and there isn't a single game this season where they haven't fooled an opposing team multiple times on play action. They're so good at it. But like, watch. So like on this play, for example, this is from the AFC Championship game. Kansas City is in a cover three zone, which makes some sense. This is what you want to do when you're trying to stop the run because it's zone coverage, so you can kind of have guys closer to the middle of the field where they can be in position to try to make a stop. And with cover three, you only have one safety back, whereas in a cover two, you have two safeties back. What's really interesting here is look at how, especially those two players, look at how close they're going to get in. Now, the linebacker is actually going to step back a little bit, but then they're both going to move very close in, and they're both ready to try to stop a run right here. They're both definitely selling out to try to stop the run. There's honestly only two Kansas City players who will not be able to stop a run up the gut right now. Everyone else is in position to try to make a play. You talk about eight in the box. Well, this is almost like nine in the box. Nine guys just in that area who can make a play. That's a huge way they're able to run over and stop Derrick Henry for a rush of just 4 yards, which honestly, against Derrick Henry, you feel like that's a win after stopping him for just 4 yards. But the problem with that was that it really did open up the door for Ryan Tannehill early on to be able to make some plays through play action. Like on this one, it's going to be a cover three zone. They're going to run play action to the top half of the screen, and then they have a receiver running that route right there. And so remember what I said. With zone coverage, that means that the linebackers can move closer in to try to stop the run. And since they're moving closer in, this now means that you can throw it over them. The gaps in coverage will definitely be widened. I mean, watch. Right after the ball is snapped, Kansas City is totally expecting a run right here. Look at those two players. They're almost at the line of scrimmage right now because they think it's going to be a run, but Henry's already out of the way. He's back to pass right now. This is just now when they figured it out. And if you look right over there, I mean, they're ready for a pass. They're ready for this to be complete. It's just such a big opening. Tannehill is easy able to make that throw. I mean, I could make that throw. That's too easy. And A.J. Brown even does some good work after the catch to gain some more yards before getting taken down in a pretty fun way by Tyrann Mathieu. But that's the dilemma. They run the ball so many times. They run the ball 8 times in a row. So then you're like, okay, we have to stop the run. And then when they run a play action, it just gets you. It's so easy to get fooled in that situation, and it's so difficult to stop, especially Kansas City. I mean, they have been known to get fooled on those types of plays. Like, watch, here's another perfect example of it. It's cover three zone, and this was actually later in the game, but it's going to be play action to the bottom half of the screen. Receiver runs over the middle. Again, very similar concept, but they were just able to have success with this all game. Like, watch what happens right when the ball is snapped. Just look at how far in those three Kansas City players are. Admittedly, they're now starting to move back, but there's just not enough time for them to do that. It's, again, easy for Tannehill to throw over them, and that's just a wide open window where he's able to make that throw. And quite frankly, Jimmy Garoppolo will absolutely be able to make those throws. And honestly, I mean, if it's Deebo Samuel in midfield or, George Kittle in the middle of the field, maybe they're able to make a safety miss, make a defensive back miss, and get into the end zone for a touchdown. I mean, those two guys are great after the catch, and, even Emmanuel Sanders you can count on. So it's definitely a dangerous situation. And it's also one other thing, if they sell out to stop the run, which I think that actually the AFC Championship game could be a good sort of test run for maybe what they'll do against the 49ers, because they do run very similar style offenses. I think the way that the 49ers run block is a little different, but in terms of their passing game and their play action game, it's very similar. And so I do think that the fact that Kansas City ran a lot of cover three zone can tell San Francisco, hey, let's have a lot of plays prepared for cover three. And like, watch, this one was an example of them getting burned by something like that. Once again, cover three zone. And for Tennessee, they have a perfect play where first they're going to have their receiver on the top half of the screen run a go route. And this is just a setup route. It's solely designed to get the defensive back who's in charge of covering the top corner of the screen to make sure he stays deep. Because then what they'll do is they'll have a tight end run that route, and then they'll have Derrick Henry after another play action will run in that direction. So Therefore, the defensive player who's in charge of covering the flat on the top of the screen, he basically is in a dilemma where he either has to stay deep and cover the tight end or run shallow and cover the halfback, but either way, there will be a player open. Like, watch, after the ball is snapped, basically he has to choose which one of those two he has to cover. I mean, he could just stay deep and hope that the linebacker is able to keep pace with Henry, but that's dangerous because if he does do that, then one thing, Henry is faster than a linebacker, and two, now you're hoping that someone can tackle Henry in open space, which is just not easy to do. So it's kind of a dilemma. That's still what you probably should do, but he does not do that. It makes it easy for Tannehill to throw over him and get a first down. Listen, the Kansas City Chiefs defense isn't atrocious by any means, but that's honestly probably its biggest flaw. And I mean, it's kind of an unfortunate situation because it's also the 49ers' biggest strength, which is why I do think this is going to be a very high scoring Super Bowl. Like, watch, here's an example of San Francisco beating Minnesota on basically the same exact play. It's a cover three zone. They're going to run play action and then have a receiver run over the middle. And after the ball is snapped, Minnesota doesn't actually do even a terrible job. I mean, listen, they have very smart players, so they do a pretty decent job at staying relatively back, although right over there, clearly a receiver is going to get open at a certain point. And that's also one of the problems is that if you run that kind of route against cover three, even without play action, it can still be effective, although the windows will be a lot smaller. But even with the smart Minnesota linebacking core that's able to get back as best they can, this is still a completion because it was a well-ran route, and also Garoppolo made a very good throw. So that's the other side of it, is that even if Kansas City does a lot better at stopping play action in the Super Bowl, it still might not be enough with how good San Francisco is at running play action. So I think this is a very interesting thing to talk about. I think that the fact that Kansas City has really struggled with play action and the fact that the 49ers have oftentimes, just completely torn teams apart by using play action, I mean, to me, that's something that I would definitely be concerned about if I am a Chiefs fan. I think that's probably my number one concern. I still am picking Kansas City to win because I trust Mahomes more than Garoppolo, and that's totally an oversimplification. The main reason I'm saying it is because I think that the receivers that Kansas City have will be able to just outrun the defensive backs that the San Francisco 49ers have. I think outside of Sherman, they don't have a ton of great talent in the secondary. The secondary is definitely sort of the weaker spot of that defense, even though it still is pretty good. Although that being said, I totally think this is going to end up being like a 38-35 game, if not more than that. I could easily see this being the highest scoring Super Bowl in NFL history. I mean, I think I'm saying bet the over if you're a gambling fan because I absolutely think this will be high scoring. And I do think that San Francisco can have a lot of success on the Chiefs defense. And when I said I trust Mahomes more than Garoppolo, I mean, that's not to say I don't trust Garoppolo. Look at what he did against the Saints. I mean, this guy can absolutely hang with the best of them. I mean, it's one of those Super Bowls that can absolutely go either way. I'll give the slight edge to Kansas City. I think I tweeted out earlier today that I would say about 60% chance Kansas City wins, about 40% chance the 49ers win. I think that feels about right to me, but I mean, you never know. I mean, it's a Super Bowl. Anything can happen. It's true. I don't think any of us saw the Rams offense getting completely shut down like it did on Super Bowl 53. So, I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But showing something like this, I think it's cool to just sort of have the idea going into the game of like, I wonder what they'll do against play action, and then watch the first couple of drives and just sort of see what they do. I think that'll be fascinating. That's just my opinion. But anyways, one other thing I'm going to talk about is that actually I think the 49ers have a bit of a tell when it comes to the way that they run their offense. So I'm actually going to make an entire video about that. There's kind of a tell where you can see if they're going to be running the ball or passing the ball. Not always, but there's something interesting you're going to want to look at, I think. So I'm going to make a video about that. I'm going to release that. My plan is to release that later today, so be on the lookout for that. And also, one more thing is that I actually started a Twitter and Instagram. I've been creating like these little bite-sized clips, just like a 20-30 second clip where I quickly break down a play and maybe throw a joke in there. So about just a play that I found interesting. So I've already made a couple of those. I'm going to make one of those every day. So just if you want some more football content, maybe some quicker football content as opposed to these 10-minute long videos, feel free to check me out on those. The link is in the description below. So just click on that for my Twitter or my Instagram, and also say hi. I always love hearing from you guys. So, yeah, so definitely make sure you check those things out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.